Hey everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thank you so much for joining me here. I hope you're having a great day. We're taking a quick look here at WIF hat. I'm going to explain to you why I feel like we're going to see a dollar 150 and even further higher with this coin. And just so you know, I do have some skin in the game myself. My average cost is about 50 cents and I've got about 115,000 WIF hat. So it's not a small bag, but not a big one either. I guess depends on how you look at it. I try not to put too much into meme coins, but this is one of those coins I feel has got some significant potential. So we're going to look at the macro, kind of give you some perspective as to why I think that. And this isn't going to be an analysis that's biased based on the fact that I'm averaged in at a lower cost. It's nothing to do with that. It's simply put, I'm averaged in at 50 cents, mainly because I've been covering this for a while. You've probably been watching my videos, and you'll know that this is a coin that I feel has a good amount of potential. Once again, it's pretty rare that I'm going to invest this much into a meme coin, but this one has probably one of the better potentials as far as sustainability and the environment too, or just, I've got a friend that's has like this really big community of WIF hat people, and they are like super supportive, and it's a pretty awesome little scenario there. So if you're part of that, pass this along, and hopefully this can be very good educational content for you and your friends. But at this point, what we're going to look at is WIF hat, obviously, the liquidation levels first, right? So the left-hand side's the last 7 days, we got 90 cents as local liquidation. We could see the price push up a little higher, but this doesn't really incentivize the price too much from a bigger perspective here, based on the simple fact that there's more liquidation than downside. So market makers know that this coin is very volatile, jumps up and down by 10 to 20% on average in every per week. So at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if we do actually see 50 cents as a potential next target. There's a lot of liquidation down there, but we held that price very strong. It was a previous high, retested as a new low. So it's just a pretty obvious area of interest if the price were to come back down. I'm probably going to add to my position at that level. Having said that, if we see here, liquidation delta, this basically tells us there's a tremendous amount more bulls than bears, based on the simple fact that there's less selling pressure and more buying pressure, right? This is basically just letting us know there's a tremendous amount of longs versus shorts in the market right now, and you don't want to try to bet against it. Even though that obviously ebbs and flows, for the moment, it's looking pretty strong. So that's a good reason why this coin is looking sustainable at this point. It's performing very well, contrary to Bitcoin pulling back and doing much better. So can this coin pull back? Absolutely. Can it move up fast and quick? Yeah, even better. It's more likely the case. And I'll explain on the charts what I mean by that. We look at open interest here too. This is just kind of an indication of where people are averaged into their positions the most. 65, 70, 73 cents. Those are the three areas of interest here locally. Okay, so that kind of reinforces support in those ranges. All that said, let's look at the macro here so we can get some perspective on what's going on. First of all, it was massively overextended to the downside here at a 9 on TD sequential, and then it went sideways in about the 65-cent range for about a month, and then continued to pull back even further. I was super happy to see the 30-cent range, as I averaged in pretty heavy there. That's why you see how much WIF hat I have, and the the value itself. While at this point I'm not quite at break even, it's still a good significant amount of return because I've been able to average in at lower price points. So that's kind of how dollar cost averaging is supposed to work. You get in when the price is overextended to the downside. Its point of control, by the way, is right there at that 36-cent mark. So that's usually a good place to consider getting in most coins. I would recommend being careful and cautious, trying to having the same approach on meme coins, because the truth is we're not over these moving averages on the weekly. So the weekly time frame isn't looking super phenomenal, but what is awesome, and this is a consistency across the board with other altcoins and as well, is MACD convergence. Bitcoin also is exuding this behavior. In other words, we have a very larger swing to the upside here. Now, does that mean we're just going to shoot to the stratosphere from here? Probably not, but I do think if we were to break our local high here of like 75 cents, I'll show you that on the charts, we're likely to see 140, 150 as that next low retest as a new high. So I'm considering securing some profits in that range, possibly holding some of my position left open and letting that run to the running higher. All that being said, a weekly time frame isn't amazing, but it's got some really good momentum shifts going for it. Okay. Now the daily time frame is where the magic kind of comes alive here. If we kind of see, we have 70 on the RSI getting retested. Typically, when you retest, the push is much higher. It's a very similar to like a second stochastic swing, either up or down. It carries more weight because the second time the bears, or in this case, have lost control. They can't sell because they don't really have much left, and then people just keep buying. So we're more likely to see that if and under the impression Bitcoin doesn't dump. Okay, now I had to preface that or kind of tell you that because that's just the cold hard facts of how the market is right now. And this coin is no exception. It's not like it doesn't go down when Bitcoin goes down, but it recovers and goes up twice as fast lately since Bitcoin has been increasing and kind of showing some stability. All right, and that's usually a good sign. So nice little front runner there if we see here. MACD is also converging on the daily time frame. Stochastic swinging up. We're right there at 70 on the RSI, above the moving average, and our money flow index is above. This is very uncommon right now, by the way. Most money flow index, MFIs, on the daily time frame are under the RSI for most other coins, which shows a little bit of weakness. Not to say this can't change, and it likely will. I'm expecting Bitcoin to sell off this weekend. There's a decent chance that we do come back down and pivot and bounce off this local high. We see a lot of volume accumulated there. That 0.236 fib level at about 66 cents. So 66 cents is likely going to be the next area of consideration for long. So let's take a look at that here. We can kind of see we're looking good in that regard. The 4-hour time frame has all convergences here, essentially. We're above 70 on the RSI too. You don't want to consider selling until the price pulls back below that. And overall, there's nothing bad here. The thing I wanted to highlight and identify before I forget is if I'm not mistaken, is a daily time frame. We got somewhat of a cup and handle pattern forming here. Now, this is definitely something that comes with, you got to kind of, well, let me, in other words, take this with a grain of salt, because these are patterns that don't always work out the way they're supposed to. But a lot of times candlestick patterns, as long as they're confluent with the overall trend, they're more likely to occur. So some people seem to think that candlestick patterns or play out charts, they're less likely to happen or more likely. I think they're better if they have other confirming factors. So in this case, we have a tremendous amount of momentum over all moving averages. The local point of control is below the price. If the price were to pull back, which is still expected, we shouldn't see too aggressive of a pullback. It would be this 0.382 or 0.5 fib level. So 60 or 54 cents would be the two normal targets there. But the concept here is that the price action is going to work itself down into a descending type of channel and inevitably break to the upside. That's kind of how cup and handle patterns work. So once more, this is very premature, very preliminary. I'm not proposing we see this exactly, but I've seen a lot of these play out. And lately, they're occurring based on the simple fact that manipulation and or profits need to be taken, right? So that's kind of the general consensus there. If you're not familiar, I post these playout charts on our Twitter, Telegram, and Discord. It's all available for you there. I also have shorts now as well that I'm providing, which people seem to really appreciate. So make sure you hit the like button, comment below on those. But the overall sense here is this is all here for you in case you want it or need it. But those are my 2 cents. What are your thoughts? What do you think WIF is going to do? Do you think it's going to take off or kind of just run stagnant? It's certainly got a lot of volatility, and the volume is increasing. We're back up over our moving averages in the larger time frames. I just really have a good feeling about this coin, just mainly because of how well it's doing contrary to the majority of the rest of the market in these circumstances, this situation. So just be mindful. Bitcoin could still correct itself, and if it does, consider buying the next dip. All right, folks, I hope you have a good rest of your day. Thanks again so much for your time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.